My name is Annette Ephroni-Grace, and I'm here with my wife, Ilana Grace, at our home and the Tantra temple that we hold, that we serve in, called Tasting Life Temple in Nevada City, California. We run a tantric retreat center. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner, psychotherapist of about 20 years. And a sexuality, intimacy, and relationship coach which graduated in the Somatica method. And we are working with a lot of different modalities here, including working with non-ordinary states of consciousness via medicine.
And I'm Ilana Grace. My background began with mediation, for about a decade of mediation and a real passion for communication and human relationships. And then I moved into body work and into massage therapy and cultivated that profession and found really interesting overlaps, communicating verbally, communicating non-verbally, attuning, holding space for transformative process. So that's really been my passion, is how to hold space and generate, create, cultivate, integrate transformative processes. I started pursuing Tantra with my ex-husband almost 2 decades ago. And then after my divorce, I pursued Tantra teacher training. Simultaneously, as I was pursuing Somatica, sex and relationship coaching training. And it was my desire, and still is my desire, my passion, to expand our understanding and experience of human sexuality, its purpose, and its generative quality, and bringing that into life more. So those are my passions. Annette and I came together 3 years ago, and in our relationship, as our relationship has deepened, our work together has deepened, and we found a lot of resonance between the way that we work, the modalities that we bring for holding transformative process, especially through altered states. And we use different modalities for altered states, including Tantra, which is the heart of our Tantra temple. And psychedelic medicine is one of the ways to achieve an altered state, which can potentially catalyze a different experience for the human having it, and therefore generate a slightly different experience of being human, being in one's own body, in one's life. And that change can then catalyze a lot of different things, or just be an experience, depending on what people are ready for and wanting.
So, psychedelic experiences, psychedelic medicine was a very important part of my life from my late teens. And I think it was quite formative in helping me navigate understanding my place in my community and in my culture, helping me to deconstruct and reconstruct a life that understood where I came from in my family, where I came from in my religious background, where I came from inside structures of power and hierarchy as I was studying women's studies at the time, and to become aware that I got to have choices that were more conscious and more intentional about where I would position myself in the world and in my own psyche and in relation with myself. Of course, then followed several decades of other kinds of exploration and continued work with psychedelic medicine, but lots of kinds of exploration to try to live into that understanding that I had a choice and that I have choices, and that there are many perspectives and many lenses through which I can experience this radical reality of being a human animal or a human being with the responsibilities and privileges therefore appertaining. So psychedelic medicine has really opened a lot of perspective, paradigm shifts, and gentle places as well, places inside me that have felt like locked rooms that I couldn't quite get to. For example, experiences of forgiveness or experiences of empathy or compassion. So they've been a part of my personal journey for the past 30 plus years. I started working with psychedelic medicines professionally in the past 5 or 6 years because my practice as a psychotherapist had kind of reached a place where I wasn't sure exactly how to move forward with clients that had made a lot of change. I was working as a psychoanalytically trained psychotherapist. It's a modality where you tend to work with people over 10 to 20 years. I was in that window with some of my clients, and they'd made so much change and so much growth, and many of them had seemed to reach a place where traditional talk therapy, self-exploration was kind of hitting an endless loop. And there was a huge desire that they had for more. And I had a huge desire to help them access that. And in my own path, both via psychedelic medicines and via Tantra, most particularly, and via some other methods like meditation work that I had done, long path of yoga, I knew that there were places that one could get to, but that those places you couldn't access them without novel pathways. And some of those pathways are through the body, which is why I've pursued increasing levels of working with embodiment through tantric practice, tantric teaching, sexuality coaching. And some of those pathways were opened through suppressing the usual suppression that our brain does, through psychedelic medicine that actually overrides pathways that limit the ways that we can perceive neurologically. So I began to work with my clients in my psychotherapy practice with ketamine, which is, the psychedelic medicine that is legal to use in the United States at this time. And in places such as the Netherlands, where I can do work with other psychedelic medicines, began to work with clients in that way. We can talk more about that. But yeah, that's where my interest in running this retreat has come from.
My experience with psychedelics also began back in my teens, and it was entirely recreational and transgressive, and I did not think about it at all as medicine at the time. And so I had a few different experiences that were fun, seeing the world in different ways, experiencing my brain in a different way. Maybe about 5 years ago, once I began the Tantra teacher journey and the real conscious exploration of being a human, what is it to be human in this body? What is the body for? What is an embodied life like? Those questions started to really work me, and my experiences with psychedelics at that point became medicine. They also became more solo journeys. They're not distracted by recreation, but are a journey inward. And I emerged from those with a completely new level of respect and compassion for the experience of being a human being. It's really hard to be human. There's a lot going on. And just the simplicity of being a creature that is upright, with eyes wide open, taking in so much sensory information, making meaning, making choices about what to focus on, and then taking action based on that meaning. That is just pretty high level programming there. So that was pretty profound for me as a transition with psychedelics. And then I had a retreat that I experienced at Mother's House in the Netherlands that took that to a much deeper level of just profound respect and recognition of my gifts, owning some of my gifts a little bit more, giving me the courage to present in the world with that. So it was cathartic for me. The reason that I want to lead psychedelic retreats is, again, like I was speaking to earlier, the idea of altered states of consciousness being in our brains in a different way especially for those of us who've been in this body and in this brain for decades, maybe 5 decades, maybe more. There is such a sense of knowing what it is to be human and what it is to be alive, and to have something that can give us a very radical, different experience and lens is incredibly powerful. And I believe that our brain, our thinking, there's a lot of filters that are in place that are like a computer program. And psychedelics are not the only thing that can remove some of those filters. Breath work can do a lot to those filters as well. The combination of psychedelics and breath work takes it to another level. Non-specific amplifiers, psychedelics, I feel, are really well defined as a non-specific amplifier. So if we're giving people a particular container, a particular setting, amplifying what we're desiring to learn, holding space for a deep journey with that, I just believe there's so much potential there for change. And change doesn't have to happen, but when change is wanted, it's sometimes very difficult to catalyze it. And this is a way. It can be so many different things, what it's like to be on a psychedelic journey. I'll start with the idea of how to prepare, setting an intention, and being vague enough and specific enough with the intention. So not asking for the answers, but asking for what you are seeking to learn more about, to know more. So simple intentions like revealing what is in my way, what are the obstacles in my path, revealing what are the gifts I'm here to express, things that are along that line. And then bringing that into the field as much as possible. Again, if we define psychedelics as non-specific amplifiers of what is present in the field, starting to cultivate a field that you're wanting to have amplified. Reducing substances and altered states right before the journey and the week leading up to the journey. I have found that often if I'm intending on some kind of a significant journey, whether it's psychedelics or a vision quest, the journey starts like a week before, where I feel like I'm in a bit of a descent. There's like starting to work with descending into the journey. And so writing that descent, journaling, crafting, spending time with self, time with loved ones, being in reflection and preparation. And then what it's like to be at a psychedelic retreat. It is intimate and deep and intense and in community, in connection. There is the way that we work, and Vicky as well, is with a profound respect for people's pace and capacity. There's a lot of permission for sharing oneself or holding that close and within, and being in the group in the ways that allow for one's own full participation. And we respect what full participation looks like for each individual.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about, I'll answer this question through a little bit of a neurobiological lens. One of the medical explanations about why serotonergic psychedelics like psilocybin that we'll be using on this retreat do what they do is that they override a structure in the brain called the default mode network. And that structure really tells us it's there to protect us, it's there to help us survive, and it's a structure that is constantly filtering for what is dangerous. So when we override that structure, we're able to have a lot of different input, a lot of different neural networks firing that are usually not paid attention to because our brain is selectively filtering for what's dangerous. So when one is preparing for a psychedelic journey, one is preparing to put themselves in a state where they're going to be very open. We have a lot. I don't want to get too medically nerdy here for a second, but we're putting ourselves into a chemical state that's much more like the state that we're in when we're toddlers and when we're teenagers, when we are putting on new brain matter. And so when we're preparing for a psychedelic journey, we are preparing to put ourselves in a state where our brain is very fertile, very open, very fresh, and new wiring is going to be possible. And so I might say that the experience of being in a psychedelic journey is one of being very open. Often people report experiences like feeling a part of everything, the idea of oceanic oneness with everything. But that's not always what people have at all. The experience can be many, many things. But we are in a state of tremendous innocence, tremendous openness, tremendous flexibility. So in preparing for putting ourselves into a state where we're going to surrender to that kind of openness, think about treating ourselves maybe a little bit like babies or like toddlers, trying to manage to create a container of preparation that's very intentional, that is full of things that nourish us in whatever ways that looks like for a particular person. That creates the environment we want to amplify and the questions we're really interested in opening in ourselves.
Curiosity, that may be one of the most powerful things that I believe we can bring into our journey is curiosity.
Yeah.
Curiosity and non-attachment. Openness, curiosity, non-attachment.
Yes, because life, like the experience of living, is this experience of going into something that you can't control and you can't predict. You can make some adjustments to try to set up containers in life that are more likely to give you the experience you want. But fundamentally, the experience of being a living human or any other organism is the experience of stepping in every moment, every breath to the unknown. And so another way to think about what it's like to be on a psychedelic journey is like it's an encapsulation, a practice of living, stepping consciously into the unknown, bringing yourself, not knowing what you'll become as you encounter the unknown, and hopefully being able to say yes. Yes, I keep choosing. Yes, I keep stepping. Because then our lives become more an experience of conscious surrender to life. Yeah.
Well, this retreat is for women, igniting the fire within. And so it is for women. And I would say it is for anyone that is wanting an encapsulated time to really go inward and be held in community with other women. I also find it really just spectacularly beautiful that 2 of the 4 facilitators are or were midwives. So therapists and midwives and women who hold space for birthing. So women who are feeling ready to birth something new in their lives, to express themselves in some new way, to find the fuel internally to generate from and to fuel their own forward propulsion. I would say that this workshop is for them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good description. And I thought a lot since we named the workshop Igniting the Fire Within. Like, what is that? What is that fire that we're talking about? And so I think of women at many, many stages of life. I think about women who might be young and just beginning their adult lives, who are ready to find what is that fuel, to find what is that spark, to find what motivates and drives and pulls us forward and pulls us into that yes to life. I think of women who are in the, child rearing and mothering phase of life, who are able to find a little space from their children for a week, who need to go back inside and reconnect with the fuel that fuels me specifically. We spend a lot of energy. Many women spend a lot of energy fueling our communities and fueling our families and fueling our social networks and taking care of other people. And this is an opportunity for women who are in that phase of life to really go inside and reconnect with a fuel for themselves. And then phase of life that I myself am in. We're in the sort of mid phase of life. I'm in my 50s. And there's a whole new fire that needs to be found when some of the old things that seemed to be driving me biologically, seemed to be driving me in terms of actualizing a profession, when some of that is quieted down, what's the new, more quiet flame that might guide for this phase of life? And I can't yet speak to the next phase of life beyond this one. But I know a lot of women who've used psychedelic medicine so productively in their 60s, 70s, and later in life as they're finding a way to integrate what they have lived and what they yet want to live. So I think this retreat is for women in a lot of places.
Also, being Tantra teachers, Annette and I, we are bringing into the group some of that Tantric ideas and practices that can help us find ways to fuel the fire within that are more energetic and more in the body, and not so much seeking intellectually what do I want to do in life, but finding ways to use, even if it is our sexuality, and can we tap into our own sexuality and use that as a fuel source that is vitalizing our own experience. So our sexuality is no longer about something that we can share with others to have an experience, but something that we can use for fuel to drive our own experience. It's a very different lens. So as we played with names and we explored, the well within, and we decided to go with igniting the spark with something that is like you can also light it up. And what are ways to light it up that you are empowered to do yourself through the very act of breathing?
Well, I'm really excited to know who you are, who's coming to take this journey with us. I'm really excited about that because as we learn who's coming, we will be creating and crafting and curating practices. And I love that you began to bring in the embodiment. I don't want to say piece, the embodiment source of our work, because fundamentally this whole experience of being human, it doesn't happen. I like the phrase, we're not a brain in a bag. We are, we're this whole organism that includes our body and our mind and our creativity and our heart and our love and our passion, and involves all of these pieces. So we are looking forward to learning a little bit more about the life stages, that our participants are in, what's bringing you to register for this workshop and to want to come, so that we can tap into the sort of many bags of skills and training and modalities that we can use to really craft practices. For example, we might be working with a group of women who's really wanting to own their sovereignty, and who's really wanting to find ways to know, where do I end and where does someone else start, where do I stop and where does someone else begin, and how do I work with my edges, how do I communicate my needs clearly to someone else. That might be the kind of workshop that we're really creating, or it could be that we are working with a group of people who are really needing to release a lot from the body, and a lot of our focus might be on how do we discharge what's past and what hasn't served us and refuel. There could be a lot of different focuses that we can blend and draw from. So I'm really excited to create this workshop.
I'm really excited to be working in this group of 4 women facilitators. Our backgrounds are so different, and the thing that is consistent for all of us is holding space for transformation, holding space for new life. And whether it's midwifery and bringing life into the world and holding women who are delivering that through the pain and through all of it. Or Tamara, who has a really rich background in ayahuasca and holding those kinds of transformative spaces. Or us, and we have a lot of gifts around holding space and creating intensity, creating a field where catharsis can take place. And we also, Annette and I, are pretty focused on making it be things that are integratable. Catharsis is wonderful, and we love generating it and being in that field. And we want to make sure that people are going home with it in a way that is, it can be integrated. It can become a facet of everyday life. For me, I'm much more motivated to create pathways in life for people than to give people an experience. Experiences are great, but that's not what I'm in the market for. I believe that this is going to be a workshop that will have a particular form and structure that we already envision without knowing all of the participants. It will have a form that moves energy, that begins a day with some movement of energy through the body, amplifying something to be present in the space for when the medicine is included. So there's going to be a lot of trying to keep things moving, keeping the energy moving from settling until we reach the place in the arc where we can allow everything to settle and see what emerges. So there will be pieces that we will be tailoring to the group and an overarching idea that we are bringing to the group. I think it's going to be intense and intimate and beautiful. And I'm also wanting to weave in here the idea that we're going to be inviting women to be in community holding themselves. And we're actually going to be inviting them to not hold themselves during the journeys. We will hold them. And throughout the retreat, to not be holding others in any intentional way, but to hold themselves, so that we're creating a community that is caring and supportive, but no one is taking care of anyone else. Women can come to this retreat, they can set their burdens down, they can set caregiving down, and they can just be.
I think that the last thing that I want to bring in is one of the fundamental tenets of the work that Ilana and I do is the idea that healing means expanding the range of options that are available. We don't believe in the sense of psychic or psychological healing, like the healing of a physical wound where we hope that the body gets back to exactly the same as it was before the wound. We believe that healing as a person or as a psyche has to do with having new experiences and using them to expand the contact we can have with life and to expand the range of choices we have with which we can enter our next moment and our next relationships and our next experiences. So I think that a large part of what this retreat will be about is helping women look at the choices that they have internally, look at the places where there's not flow, where they wish there was more flow, where they long for more flow and more choice and more feeling of autonomy and the ability to write their own story, and looking at how can they open a door of more freedom to respond to life authentically for them.
And so maybe igniting the fire within is finding the ways through Tantra, for example, to ignite that spark. And maybe it is finding the internal permission to be who they are, to express as they truly are, authentically, as they're wanting to express, as opposed to playing the roles that they have adopted.
And that doesn't look like any particular thing. I just had a newsletter from a beautiful teacher in my field. Thank you, Erin, who teaches a lot of embodiment work, and there's a sort of aesthetic that often goes along with that kind of work. That we can think of stereotypes of yoga and hippies and freedom that might include certain clothing aesthetics and certain aesthetics about what we put in our bodies. And she wrote this beautiful newsletter about a participant who came to one of her workshops, and her radical act of freedom and self-expression was bringing her Diet Coke, to this group of people who all had their room temperature water in quart-sized jars. And she loved that, and I love her for loving that, and I love her for putting that in my field. Like, that's what we want. We want women to come to this retreat to be themselves and to try all the positions of being their own vital selves in this world. That's what we want.